Hello, hello. Welcome back to the Story Darlings podcast. I'm Sandra.
And I'm Tera.
And what are we talking about today, Tera?
We are talking about a court of wings and ruin. I'm just trying to combine all the words here. I abbreviated it, which I've seen a lot of people do, like ACOTAR. So this one's called ACOWAR. And every time, or ACOWAR, I don't know, but every time I read that, I think Pitch Perfect and excuse me?
Excuse me?
I haven't seen that. So you said corn and your shirt is Hocus Pocus, right? I'm like, you're just thinking of candy corn, cornfields, Halloween is on your mind.
I have already eaten a full bag of candy corn. So in the movie Pitch Perfect, they're a cappella. And so it's this thing where they just keep saying "aka" in front of everything.
Hands in, aka bitches.
And anyway, yeah. That's
A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. So if you're just tuning in and finding our little show, just know that Tera and I are going through the entire ACOTAR series. If we have spoilery discussions splitting each book into 2 in-depth episodes. So go ahead and check out A Court of Thorns and Roses and A Court of Mist and Fury. Those 4 episodes are available, and we previously held a read-along for the Throne of Glass series. So we're just kind of going through the series publication order for Sarah J Maas.
Mm-hmm. And it was just announced during an interview that there's going to be another A Court of Thorns and Roses book. And she hinted very seriously that there might be another Throne of Glass book. Because she said, it's over, but is it? So I am interested to see where she takes these. So we will obviously just be going through the books that are written now, but there may be some additional books moving forward. So
if you're new to us, Tera is a Sarah J Maas virgin. This is her first time going through each of the series. I'm a veteran reader, and so I cannot wait until we're done and we can talk about some other stuff besides all of the plot points and character stuff that happens in the books and just Sarah J Maas stuff in general. So it's very exciting. I love seeing that news. So again, this is going to cover the first half of A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the first 36 chapters of the book. And then on Monday, we will tune in for the second half. So this book opens up. It is the past. Rhysand is having a flashback of 2 years before the wall has been built. And he is on a killing field looking for the bodies of Cassian and Azriel. And it's just kind of that mental state of PTSD and really caring about his friends, and you kind of get the sense that this is why he always shoulders so much of the burden, because he fears losing them, and he feels it's his obligation and responsibility to take care of those that he loves. So we get to see a little bit of that in the flashback, and then we come back to the present moment. And if you remember, the previous book left off with Feyre and Rhysand going behind everyone's back and dubbing her High Lady of the Night Court. And so now she has infiltrated Springcourt. And so, Tera, you want to talk about how life is going in Springcourt and who's there and what's going on?
So she is playing double agent in the Springcourt. She is pretending like nobody's business. She is getting an Oscar for this performance. That she is very happy to be back in the Springcourt, and that her time in the Night Court was horrible, right? And so we open up on her painting what she calls a lie, which is happiness in the Springcourt and blooming flowers and all of this. And inside she is I want to kill everybody here, basically. And then we also see that Ianthe comes for an apology, and I'm apology because she is basically just well, I'm sorry that I had to do that. Bullshit, bitch. Anyway, and then we see that Lucien is really mad, and he wants to find Elaine, who, if you missed last time, we discovered that Elaine is actually Lucien's mate, and he wants to find her. And then In comes two new characters, Brana and Dagdan. And these two are twins, which I got some very incestual vibes off of these, like Game of Thrones, like Cersei and like whatever the dude's name is, the right hand.
Yeah,
What is his name?
I
Jamie?
yeah, I totally could see that. I also got I don't know what Dakota Fanning's character was in Twilight, but with the
Hmm.
mind
Like
games
her
going on
brother
between
too.
Farah and stuff. Mhm.
Soon we would face the dark gifts of Jane, and worse, the paralyzing vapor of her brother Alec.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like very
Like
much that.
very over-connected to your twin in some
Yeah.
way, whatever way that might be, you were over-connected to them. And it is pointed out that he is like subservient to her. Like he is like flying her around and like what she says goes. And so that was also a weird like relationship
Dynamic, yeah.
there.
Mhm.
And so we see Feyre playing kind of that double agent, and she is working on everybody's emotions. Like, for example, she tricked Jurian into threatening her so that she could be like, don't threaten me in my own house, to like then play on Tamlin's like she is happy to be here. And so she's like baiting two people at once. And I loved seeing that like mind fuckery going on in the spring court.
You said Farah deserved an Oscar for her performance. I felt the exact same because there's no way in hell I would have been able to like keep all of my lies straight and all of this stuff like and not slip up somehow. I enjoyed seeing her kind of, sow jealousy in Tamlin
Mhm.
by cozying up to Lucian and just like creating these
Yes.
weird situations that are very intimate for him to stumble upon.
And for Ianthe to stumble upon, because as
Yes.
we hear later on, because like Tamlin didn't want to do the rites of Calamite, Lucian had to, and he was forced to do that with Ianthe. And she kind of has her claws in him. She doesn't like to be told no, and Lucian is telling her no now, but then Feyre is also like plotting that and pissing off Ianthe with her like flirting kind of with Lucian and like building these moments.
Farah is so good at sowing dissent within the Spring Court and making everyone doubt Tamlin's ability to be High Lord and his power and influence. And we have an event where it's summer solstice, and we basically get to see Feyre go head to head with Ianthe in, you know, Ianthe isn't aware of what all Farah's powers are, and so Farah uses Dawn Court power to like make this like holy moment, like lighting up like the sun whenever it was supposed to be Ianthe's moment. It's just I loved all of those little moments so much.
Well, and you also see Feyre being a badass when she notices that the twins are trying to get in people's minds. And
Mm-hmm.
she throws up again, like I envision this like Bella Swan in Twilight where she threw up the shield around everybody to where like whatever his name is couldn't read their minds. It's very similar. Like she's the shield for everybody in that court so that the twins can't get into their minds and then possibly figure out what she's doing in the
A lot of possible failure points that she has to keep an eye on, and it was really fun to watch all of that go down. And so you see the arrival of the King of Hybern's niece and nephews, and you see Jurian there. And there's a couple people in court who doubt Feyre's authenticity with being back there. So Lucian has his doubts, but again, he's tied to Elaine. Alice knows for a fact that Feyre
Mhm.
is faking her feelings with being back and knows that her heart is with Rhysand in the Night Court.
And she knows that because she was there the day that Feyre left. She was there. She saw Feyre go into the shadows. She saw Mor come get her. And she saw Feyre choosing to go. And so she knows for a fact that it was her choice and that they did not kidnap her. And
Yes.
I would just like to point out that I was right about both reasons that Lucian wasn't going to say that he thought Feyre was up to no good because it pointed it out in the book. I just like to be right. And I'm enjoying catching on to some of these things ahead of time, as opposed to Throne of Glass, where I was like, I have no clue what's going on. None whatsoever. So I'm enjoying that I caught on to Sarah J Maas's like kind of writing style and weaving things in.
Yes. Jurian also knows that there's something going on with Feyre too, because he knew Rhysand back then, and he knows the whole persona that Rhysand crafted was just a facade, like a role that he had to play with Amarantha. And so, how do you feel about Jurian, since he's kind of new and kind of a different angle than we got in the previous book?
I'm still kind of torn on him because I think he's going to come back to the right side. I think he's going to be that like anti-hero, and the whole time he's going to be like sowing his discord where he can, because what he really wants is Miriam back, and we're led to believe that he wants her back because he's mad at her for choosing Draken. But I don't know, like maybe there's a different reason that he's wanting to, like, I mean, because in the first war he was on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
He was using, what was her name, Clythe or something,
Clythia.
Clythia, to get the secrets of the Fae for the humans so that they could win that war. So I don't know that he's just gonna like let that all go. And then he also thanked Feyre at one point during this book for saving humans, didn't he?
I can't remember.
I think so.
Probably. Yeah.
And so that kind of let, like, his moments with Feyre, like he had some sweet moments where he was not on Hybern's side.
Yeah, definitely get the sense that he was on the right side, but some of the tactics that he leveraged were not very nice, not very humane, probably. So there's a series of expeditions in the Spring Court going on because the twins are inspecting the wall for where the breaks are in the wall that people can, flow back and forth between the mortal lands and the Fey lands. And you want to talk about some of the stuff that ends up happening, because Feyre is, manipulating and doing all this and making Tamlin look like an even bigger asshole in front of his own sentries.
Well, she's making him look very dumb, first of all. So the first few, she has made him let her go because he doesn't want to end up in the same boat he was where he trapped her in the house, right? And so she is getting to go on all of these exhibitions. And so there are like 3 holes in the wall. So as they're looking for these, they see some children of the blessed go through one of these holes in the wall. And the twins are sizing them up like they're their next dinner. And I think that this is where Jurian thanked her for having the side of the humans.
Oh, yeah.
Because she kind of twisted that into that the twins couldn't have these humans, and got into the humans' mind and told them, like, showed them everything bad that the Fae could do and scared the crap out of them. So they were running. And so they all went to sleep for the night, and they woke up to that the twins had went and slaughtered these humans. And for that, a badass Feyre summoned a bog to them so that they had to like be not tortured, but kind of like had to escape.
It was like a Selena or Aelin antic, right?
Yes. And she got in a little bit of trouble for that back home with Tamlin, because he was mad, and she's like, back the hell off, dude, because like you're supposed to be on my side. And she made him feel bad about yelling at her, which is great because she's playing him this whole time too. So I liked that. And then we have a moment with Ianthe where she saved everybody from the Naga attack that happens. And she basically framed one of the sentries that he fell asleep, and that the key was stolen while he was asleep. And so he was getting into trouble. And Feyre knew it was Ianthe. And so she's like, well, let's hear him out. And Ianthe's like, well, you shouldn't hear him out. Like, this is clearly what happened. And the sentry was punished anyway. But every other sentry knew that it wasn't his fault, that he did not just fall asleep and lose the key, and that was the reason for the attack. And so, again, like Sandra mentioned, she sowed that discord within the Sentries and him because she was willing to hear him out. And that comes into a key part later when she's planning her escape because she wants everyone to believe that Tamlin didn't protect her from the twins. And so she ran away and, had to escape because of that. They go on another expedition to see the third, like, hole in the wall.
So throughout the expeditions, Feyre had been experiencing headaches, like just weird headaches, and she was having a hard time communicating with Rhysand. It seemed like he was very far away, like very muffled, right? And so I think it's like the last expedition, she has like done enough espionage and sabotage and all of this that she's like, okay, I'm going to make my escape. And so she's grabbing all of her weapons, supplies. Alice has packed her food, and Alice plans on booking it from Spring Court and heading back to Summer Court with her nephews. And so it's while Feyre is about to leave, and she comes upon voices in the woods, and she sees that Lucien is restrained, like against a tree, with some of that magical chains that suppress his powers. You want to talk about that scene?
And so, again, Ianthe is not good at taking no for an answer. And so Ianthe has him, like, restrained and is telling him, but you really want me. You really want me. Like, rapist 101, like, speak right there. And he is saying, no, I'm mated. And no. And she's like, well, it didn't stop you from getting with Feyre and all of the stuff. And he's like, I'm not getting with Feyre. Like, back off. And so she comes up on her, and Feyre, being Feyre, is not happy about somebody being forced to do something that they don't want to do. And so she basically lays into Ianthe and forces Ianthe to take a rock and crush her hand, like, over and over and over and over. And then she gets in her mind and tells her that, like, you fell. That's what happened. And you need to be on the same side as the Sentries that I already, like, mind controlled into saying that, like, I ran away because Tamlin didn't protect me from the twins. And here's the pictures of me being, like, all bruised and battered and whatnot. And I ran because of that. And again, sowing that discord between everybody in his kingdom for not protecting the Cursebreaker and Cauldron Blessed and making him look like a shitbag.
Yes. He makes himself look like a shitbag, but yeah.
I mean, she's helping it.
Yes. The hand was so gross. Like the audiobook, the graphic audio version, it was just like squelching noises, and Feyre is just going to town on this hand. I'm like, okay, Feyre, obviously some pent up rage in there that needed to come out.
Well, I am very vengeful. Like, I'm a Taurus. And Sandra is a Cancer, so we are very, like, down for the you get what you get, like, you deserve it shit. And I was listening to that like, yeah, finally, that bitch got it. So I was not queasy at all, or like I was just like, yes, 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 go. So
I mean, but then the creepy twins show up.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a little throwdown. But Feyre holds her own, even though her and Lucian's power both are just too suppressed to really do anything.
Well, and we figure out why their powers are suppressed, because the twins had given Ianthe a power to feed everybody to suppress their powers, because they noticed that, like, she was a Demente or whatever it's called.
Damati.
The Mind Walkers. And so they were suppressing her power, and they're like, well, it was a good shot. Like, you were doing pretty good. And so right about that point, again, this is another fairy tale because it was the poisoned apple that like got her. And so they gave her the poisoned apple and she ate it. And that was like the last that they needed to do to fully suppress her powers. And so she and Lucien ends up killing the twins, and she changes the little mind command that she gave Ianthe and said, okay, now you're going to have to tell everybody that I killed them in self-defense because Tamlin wouldn't protect me from them. And then Lucien and her, like, hightailed it out of there, and they headed towards the Autumn Court.
It's while they go through like a cave, entry because they don't want to go under the mountain. They don't want to go to Summer Court because they're wanted there for stealing the Book of Breathings. And so her and Lucian are just creeping about Autumn Court, and they get found out by Big Brother Eris and a couple of the other brothers. But the dad isn't there, right? I don't think he's there.
No.
But they manage to escape. They're on the run again. They come out in Winter Court. They're freezing their ass off. And then again, Eris and the brothers catch them. You want to talk about what goes down there?
So they're like trying to run on this like frozen lake, and the Eris is using his firepower or whatever to unfreeze the lake. And very late, in my opinion, Feyre's like, wait, I have freezing power and I feel it coming back. So like I could use this. And like, why wasn't that the first thing you thought of? Like, is to refreeze the lake. But anyway, maybe like, I don't know. And so she's like trying to refreeze the lake and run at the same time and get out of there. And then here comes, I think Cassian lands first, but here comes Cassian and Azriel. Like how I like the books made it sound as they're like just these like avenging angels that land on the ground and it shakes. So that's what I envisioned in my head, is like two avenging angels coming, and they take aim.
Yeah, they don't kill Eris or anything.
But
Eris
they're very close.
lets it
Like
go.
she stops
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Like
but
they wanted to kill him.
they fly Lucian and Feyre to the townhouse where Rhysand isn't there yet. He's off doing other mission work, trying to get set things in motion. But it's a little homecoming scene. I'm like, I wrote chapter 14, reunion smut.
Yes. I liked before that though, when Lucian is meeting all these people, because he has like a very different impression of Cass and Az than Feyre does. And so these are his enemies. And then in comes Mor and Amren, and he's like, she's fucking real? And he's like, she's the story that kids are told to like get them to behave, or Amren's gonna come drink your blood. And I don't know why, but that made me laugh so hard, because the Amren that we've gotten to know in the like court in Feyre's stories is scary, yes, and she is a bit gruff, yes, but we've got to know her as like kind of like grumpy old aunt as opposed to this like boogeyman. And so I found that like how everybody else outside of the family views her is so incredibly different, funny.
But even those in the inner circle know that she's a bit disarming because no one really knows anything about her. Everyone is too afraid to ask. And so they're just like, that's Amren.
Yeah, but they know that she would protect them, like at any cost. So like they're not afraid of her. But I thought it was funny that like she's basically the boogeyman that these parents are like, you better behave or like the boogeyman will come get you.
Mm-hmm. And so she's reunited. Feyre's reunited with Nesta and Elaine. You want to talk about how Nesta is and how Elaine is?
Okay, so Nesta is still a fiery bitch. Like full blown. She is.
So good.
And Elaine is very withdrawn and very like sad. But before she gets reunited with them, she claims being the High Lord with the family, or the High Lady.
Yes.
And they're like, what the fuck? Like, you didn't tell us before you left? Like, that changes the dynamics for everybody else. And she's like, I don't understand why it changes the dynamics. I'm still Feyre. Like, I was the least needed. I could go. You all were needed and hurt, and I wanted to make sure you got out safe with my sisters. And they're like, no, you're a High Lady now. Like, you should not have put yourself in danger. Like, that's our job. And so it changed a lot for everybody else. And then, yes, the smut happens before she finds her sisters. Priorities, Sandra. She had her priorities. Rhys first. Then we can go visit my newly turned Fae sisters who just had their life rearranged for them. But priorities.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't want to interact with Nesta and Elaine either, though, because Nesta's just being Nesta and Elaine is just wanting to be mute and not engage with anybody. You know, both of them are reacting very differently, but the same in that they don't want to directly face what they just went through in the cauldron head on. So that nice reunion there.
We then find out that Draken and Miriam have like gone missing. Like the island no longer inhabits them. And we find out that there's something might be wrong with the cauldron. Everybody's wondering why it hasn't been used to its full potential yet. And so there might be something wrong with it. And then there's lots of hints, especially from Amryn, that Nesta is like Amryn now. Like that she took something from the cauldron is what they said. And I have an impression that that is why the cauldron is not acting right, because she took something from it. Like it's missing a piece, basically, like when its legs were cut off. It's missing a piece.
It's missing a piece. She took too much power, something. I don't know about you, but every time they talk about Nesta being who she is now, I got kind of chills because everyone is treading very carefully around her and they don't want to set her off.
But everybody treaded very carefully around her as a human too. So that's not like super different.
Except for Cassian.
I mean, he just like loves to like rile her up. just poke her. Yes. And okay, I think Az might be my favorite though.
It's the brutalized, brooding.
Mm-hmm. But then it's the moments that you see him interacting with Feyre during their flying lessons and Elaine, like getting her out of her, like, you see him being so super sweet. You see, like, he has different personalities for everybody that he's around. And you see little pieces of him come out that he doesn't want to show anybody because he is so brutalized. Like, he is pulling himself out to help each person and be the person that they need him to be. And I just can't wait for him to be the person he needs him to be. You know, like his full person, and not just because somebody else needed him to be it. But so you see his like sweet moments with Elaine and trying to be like the like peaceful, like what she needs in that moment. And then you see him like pining over more for like centuries, right? And then you also see him like he is so snarky and funny with Feyre as he's teaching her to fly. Like that one time when she like went into the tree and she's like, well, that wasn't there before. And he's like, yeah, but judging by the size of it, it's been there for 200 years. And then she's like, but I did pretty good. And he's like, well, yeah, except for the tree part. And he's just so like sweetly like funny.
Yes, I'm with you.
And so he might be my favorite.
Mm-hmm.
He might be.
I love our little shadow singer. And so Feyre's kind of getting reacclimated again, reuniting with Rhysand. She's training, Illyrian fight training with Cassian. And then she's doing the flying training, as Tera said, with Azriel, which is going so well. There's like a little TikTok going around. Have you seen it? Where
Yes,
it's like,
I have. And I'm like, wait, what?
Feyre learning to fly.
Yeah. Beautiful.
See, okay, I'm kind of hearing some popping.
No. Look at that bird. Breathtaking. Grasshopper. Get in there.
And everyone's just making fun of her, and she's just kind of like walking around the room, flapping their arms. We'll try and link that so you know what we're talking about, but it's hilarious. That is this scene.
She is also trying to study in the library to help Nesta figure out how to put the wall back together, right? Because that's something that they discovered is because she is from the cauldron, she might be able to help seal the holes in the wall, which will make it harder for the cauldron to take it down.
Yeah.
And so that is what she is trying to do. And so she gets Rhys to take her to the library, and they are searching for books and things to help them. And we discover that there is something living under the library. And it has scared the shit out of everybody, including Cassian, who is the only one brave enough to go down there and see it. And he came back up like pale as like a ghost and unable to talk about it. So something bad is living down there. But then we also like see the priestesses that are there, which threw Feyre off at first because her last experience with the priestess was not a good one. And so to kind of alleviate her stress on that, Reese tells her the story of these priestesses, which is that they were basically like used, beaten, raped, things like that. And the one that is helping them the most had her tongue cut out so that she couldn't tell on the people who did that to her. And her fingers and hands were broken too, much like she did with Ianthe. So when they were describing it at first, I was like, wait, like, is what does it happen to everyone if one priestess is hurt? Like, where's this going? But no, her hands were destroyed so that she couldn't write who did this to her either. And so Reese and healers helped her get some of the use of her hands back, but not all of it. And they couldn't help with the tongue. And so Feyre also now has a connection to these priestesses because she doesn't like it when anybody's choice is taken from them. And so they are helping her. And then Feyre, being herself, I guess, as they're getting very little help from the other Fae, is like, well, what other choice do we have? And she's like, well, if they're afraid of the monsters, then why don't we see if the monsters will help us? And so she hatches a plan to go to the bone carver and ask him if he would possibly be their ally if she set him free. She's like, it's possible because I know somebody who's gotten set free. So if I set you free, like what is your ask to be our ally?
It's such an important scene because the whole idea of using the bone carver and any of the other monsters like him, it stems from a huge argument that Rhysand and Feyre have at the library, because Rhysand keeps talking about how it's really his sacrifice and his neck on the line to do all of this stuff, and Feyre is getting so angry at him because she wants him to have a we mentality. You know, it's kind of like part two of their argument that they had previously, where he was just making decisions for Feyre and she likened him to Tamlin, and they got pissy about it. And so they have this fight and she talks about the monsters, and then they're keeping it a secret from Amren because Amren pulled herself out of this prison somehow, won't tell anyone how she did it. And so they're keeping it a secret from Amren, and then Feyre and Cashin go to the dungeon to go talk to the bone carver. And Feyre sees him again. You want to talk about what she thinks and what she learns about this?
So she sees him again, and because she has spent more time with Rhys, she recognizes the little boy that he is. And the little boy has Rhys's eyes and her mouth and her dad's mouth. And she's like, oh shit, this is our son. He is showing me our son. If we live long enough to produce a son, this is what he will look like. And so she goes ahead and asks him, like, will you help us? And he's like, well, I don't actually want to leave here. Like, this is a pretty good place for me because he came in with the old gods, and he has an older brother and a sister, and his sister is the Weaver that we've already met. So I just like how this family is like weaving into like Feyre and Rhys's story, because the Weaver got them their engagement ring and the bone carver is showing them their children. So, just weaving themselves in. But anyway, so he had 3 gods were like forced into this world, him and his brother and sister. And his brother and sister from his story are quite violent. And they don't like him. And so he's like, no, I just kind of want to stay here. They're not coming after me here. And we figure out that his brother and sister were like tricked into like kind of losing their powers a little bit by a fae who has long since died, and nobody knew their name. But he says, I hear that their bloodline continues in a human. And so, again, knowing Sarah J Maas, that was important. And I have one of 2 guesses. One is that it's the Archeron bloodline. And that's why, like, Nesta could take something from the cauldron, and why Elaine is the way she is, and why Feyre is the way she is. Or, later on in this half of the book, the 6th queen is mentioned. I'm thinking either it could be her too, because of something that I'll bring up when the 6th queen is mentioned later on. But I think it could be one of those 2 things. Anyway, So he is telling this story of his older brother, Kasha, or something like that.
Yeah, and Striga.
And Striga, which is the Weaver. And Kache is like kind of like not imprisoned, but kind of imprisoned by a lake, which again comes up in the future, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so he is hiding from them. And they are all death gods. But the bone carver is slightly different. Like he is a death god, but I don't know if he's like, much like in Greek mythology, there are different death gods. Like there's the one that's like the like peaceful death god, and there's the one that's like the carnage death god kind of thing. Like I'm wondering if he's the peaceful death god. Like he's just gonna like the, what are they called? The three women that like cut the cord kind of thing.
Oh, the Fates?
Yes. I'm wondering if he's kind of like that as opposed to like Thanatos or something like that that is more the I'm gonna take this with you kicking and screaming kind of thing. Anyway, that's my 2 cents on that. And so Feyre puts 2 and 2 together that like again there's something a little different with Nesta, and it's very similar to what the bone carver is. And so Feyre mentions that she thinks that Nesta's kind of like otherworldliness is death, and that that's what she stole from the cauldron.
Which that would be super cool. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So Bone Carver is not wanting to leave the dungeon because he is nice and cozy there, and he doesn't want to have any trouble with his siblings that would, seems like they would hurt him or, torture him somehow. But what does he ask for?
He asked for the Ouroboros, which is so fun to say. Ouroboros. Anyway, which is basically a mirror. So mirror, mirror on the wall. Like I can look wherever I want to around the world. However, Kier has it, Moore's dad. So they are already going to go there to try and convince him to let them use his warriors, the Deathbringers, or what are they called?
Darkbringers.
Darkbringers. I knew it was a D. The Darkbringers in this battle. And so she's like, well, I'm just going to like ask him for this Ouroboros too.
So there's like a little window of time before they go visit the Night Court. So Cassian and Feyre return from the dungeons. They're like, okay, we can get this Ouroboros. The thing is, you have to look into it to be able to take it. And either you die or go broken.
She doesn't learn that until they're in the Night Court.
Yeah, that's right.
Because Kier tells her that.
Yes.
But we do have that window, and in that window, they go back, and Lucien meets Elaine for the first time because he's wandering around trying to find a book, and Elaine has wandered out of her room and is sitting in the library, and she's like, who are you? And they have this small little like talk, and Elaine starts spouting like these like riddles, and like, I see a woman with like young hands turned to like old, and she hears not a raven. She hears like a fiery woman crying, and 2 ravens are coming, and things like that. And I picked up on this one right away again, because I don't know if Sarah J Maas is like a Greek mythology fan or what, but she is weaving some Greek mythology in here, because that is Cassandra, the sister of, what's his name, Paris and Troy. So she was given the power to see the future, but nobody knew what the fuck she was talking about. And that is exactly what's going on with Elaine. And so I picked up on that, but we don't find that out, and nobody else picked up on that in the story until later, when Az picks up on it after spending some time with her. But she spouts all these things, and then it is kind of mentioned again that Nesta took something from the cauldron, but Elaine was given something from the cauldron. But they do all their little testing to see if something's wrong with her, and they bring in a healer and all of these things, and the healer's like, there's nothing wrong with her. And they're like, but why is she acting this way?
Yeah.
And so we don't find that out until a little bit later.
Nesta's wholly pissed off about this. Like, oh, find a different healer to check her out. Because the old healer, she was just like, well, you could try using, her mate and see if he can use the bond to figure out if there's something wrong. But it's just fun times there at the townhouse. And then meanwhile, Nesta's getting prepared for what to expect at Night Court, working on her mental shields because, anyone at Night Court is going to be ready to backstab and use whoever that they can to their advantage. So all of that's going on.
And she's getting trained by Amren too.
which is a
with
fun dynamic, seeing those
yes.
two kind of buddy up.
Well, especially when Lucian is sitting in the room with Elaine and Nesta's supposed to be in training with Amryn and she's not paying attention and Amryn's like, look here. And like,
Yeah.
again, I just picture Amryn as like this like auntie figure, you know, the like grouchy little old woman, which I know she's not old, but, or she doesn't look old, but like in my like, I don't know, her personality seems very like grouchy old woman to me.
She's a very wise, ancient kind of
Yeah.
sass to her.
Yes.
Yeah. They arrive at Night Court, and Rhysand decides to let Feyre have her moment on the throne. And so Feyre sits the chair, and he perches on the arm of it. And everyone at court is just like, what the fuck? And he's like, bow. And everyone bows, Nesta included.
So I know, and this is my like one time this episode, but go to like the 5th season of Lucifer, and he tells like all the demons to bow. Holy hell! Yes, that is what I'm envisioning when I see.
Maybe
this.
that's why I don't see it, because I haven't made it to the 5th season yet.
Yeah, Sandra's judging Lucifer by the like 1st season, where he's just kind of goofy, but like he grows into himself throughout that series.
Hey,
Yes.
you got a little drool right there.
I know. Like if I was watching this right now, I'd have, well, never mind. I'm gonna stop.
Oh, who's getting smutty now?
Anyway,
at Night Court, Mor and Amryn, no, it's Nesta and Amryn, decide to go to the treasure trove room so they could just play with things and see how they react to Nesta there. And then
as
meanwhile,
Nesta said, things that want to kill us.
yes, play with things nicely there. And then they hold like a little council with Kier, and Eris decides to show up. And basically all Kier wants is to spite his daughter more, because as we learned from Kier, he's not a good dude. He treated Mor horribly. And so he wants direct access to visit Valaris, and he wants a connection with the Autumn Court, hence Eris being there to, you know, make that relationship happen. And if he gets those two things, then he will give them access to his Darkbringer armies against the coming war against Hybern. And so then this is when Feyre asks for the Ouroboros, and he's like, sure, you can have it, but to get it, you have to look into the mirror. And the thing is, either you go insane or it breaks you. You pretty much die. So one of those two things happen peering into the mirror. And I don't know about you when you're reading this scene, but what were the vibes that you were getting from Eris now compared to everything that we heard previously?
I think there's much more to the story than we know right now, or that Mor knew in the past. There's much more to it, because he mentions that when she slept with Cassian, he knew she didn't want him, so he let her out of the like, and he did it in a way that her dad could not come back to it. And so I get the sense that he was trying to be nice to her, and that he was not there when she was tortured and like left out, and that was not his doing. So this is another throw in of like Greek and Roman mythology, because we also meet Lord Thanatos, who is like part of the Darkbringers, I think, or we hear about him. And Thanatos is, again, like I said, a Greek god of death, which like fits. And then Eris in Greek, it might be Roman, but either way, is Aphrodite's son, which is Cupid. And so I'm wondering if she is trying to like hint with his name that he is more positive than we have put together so far. But I do also have a feeling that we're going to learn more about him, and much like Rhys, we are going to see that he is not everything that the stories have been told about.
It's so interesting that you bring up the Aphrodite stuff with Eris's mom, because we're going to see some stuff there. There's already been some foreshadowing for some big bombshells that are going to be dropped, and I can't wait to see what your reaction is to those things. it's so fun reading Sarah J Maas books because I know that either she double majored or minored, but religious studies was like her
Mhm.
area, but she's a huge geek in like mythology and all of that. And you
Yes.
definitely see how she's able
I
to
see it.
create all this stuff in her stories. It's so
It's
interesting.
it's not even just one. Like you see a bunch of different forms of mythology. And I'm a big geek on that too, because like that was part of my major in college is like the Roman and Greek and just religions of ancient times. And so you see some Norse, which like you see Morrigan is an Irish, a Celtic goddess who is the goddess of battle. And so you see that even within Morgan too, because she is her hair red too?
Moore is blonde in this.
Blonde. Okay. Well,
Hmm.
in Celtic, she's a redhead, obviously, but she has those type of dresses that you see more wear a lot too, which are like the loincloth kind of dresses and stuff. And so again, you see different types. I know I point out the Greek and Roman a lot, but like it's a different, like a lot of different piecing together of different like lores.
So masterful, one would say.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But at this council meeting, Eris, he wants his dad dead, right? So that he can take the throne of Autumn Court. And this gives the whole inner circle, Rhys and Feyre, something to think about. So they go home and they have probably the biggest family fight that they've had to date because Moore wasn't let in on stuff. So her feelings are hurt and she's feeling betrayed. Rhysand is feeling like he was in a tight spot and only did what he thought would make all of this work.
He could have told her though.
Yes,
Like,
for
I'm
sure.
sorry, he could have like let her in on some of the like little pieces. It's like Aelin in Throne of Glass. Like she could have let her friends in on like this isn't as dire as it appears. You know, like I don't know. I'm with more on that a little bit.
Yeah. And then they have Amryn being pissy as well because she learns that they went to visit the bone carver behind her back and they just like casually bringing it up in front of her. And then they decide to take this as an opportunity to pick her brain about how did you get out of the dungeons? And she has the weirdest answer is she's just like the stone and the wind listen or something to that effect, right? She doesn't want to talk about it
Well, but
out in the
she does
open
tell them
after they
a little
shield.
bit. Yeah,
Mhm.
after they shield. And then we see Elaine again because she comes in and she's like, I couldn't hear you anymore. And so she's trying to figure out what's happening. And she lets go another one of her little like two ravens are coming or something like that. And then we do see two ravens.
One white, one black.
Yeah, the king's ravens, as they're called, end up in the library. Like the king has used one of his spells to take down the wards and let his like people in, like two of them. And they are there to kidnap Nesta because they need her because the cauldron's not okay. And she took something from it.
Damn it, Nesta.
And then that's when after he spends all of his time with Nesta, he's like, yeah, you're a seer. And she's like, oh, that's what I am. That's why I feel crazy all the time. And so they're like, okay, so like everything she's telling us is truth. It's just in a riddle form kind of thing. And that's also when we figure out that the sixth queen is trapped by a man at a lake. Like, wonder who that could be. The bone carver's brother.
If you remember from A Court of Mist and Fury, when they had their final meeting with the mortal queens, and the young one, the golden queen, was like, our other sister is not sick. They're not telling us something, like something bad is happening. That mortal queen is, we learn, Vasa is her name. And so Elaine has little visions of Vasa, like the firebird queen, the fire's feathered queen.
And that is why I think maybe she is the like bloodline of the Fae who trapped the bone carver's brothers and sister. Because again, I suspect that this man by the lake is the bone carver's brother and he's trying to get her to like let him free because it's her bloodline.
Yeah, I don't know about you. They said he was a sorcerer lord. It felt very Swan Princess story, you know? And it's like, who would have the power to turn a mortal queen into a phoenix or whatever during the day? But Elaine has another sight or vision and said the queen might be coming, is what she says.
Like the queen might be able to help them. Which again, if he brings the brother, like these monsters might be like throne of glass, like all coming together for them. But I don't know. Don't know yet.
There's just so much getting dumped at us here because it's while I think Feyre's having flying lessons with Azriel and she's just feeling totally discouraged about how it's going. Like she just cannot get it together, cannot get her body to cooperate, is too weak still. And Az tells the story of Nefel, was that her name? The small seraphim, I guess, which is the Dracon, his line, Miriam's bow or whatever.
Yeah, so they're flying, but they have feathers, which feathers have been mentioned before too.
It's a lot coming into play.
And I find it like, again, with this like play on words, because Nephilim is the mix of angels and humans who might have wings, right? That have feathers. And so like, is this something to do with another like hint at a divinity?
Yes. Related note. Did you get the gist that Amren is an angel or an archangel or something like that? Because some of the wording that Sarah J Maas uses with Amren is like, she talks about how she didn't care anything. She smote cities for her god. Like she would just smite the enemies. And the day that the portal ripped open in the sky, they had just taken out twin cities, and how she talks about her grace burning out, like her grace and falling.
Okay, so this is not a mention of the show, but I got a very Lucifer vibe off of that because
damn it, you said what?
No, not the show. This is not a show related thing. But like Lucifer is the archangel. Sorry, I can't talk. Archangel that like broke off, right, and didn't do what he was supposed to do, and left and like did his own little thing, right? And so I'm wondering if she might not be something very similar to like Satan, Lucifer.
When the two ravens were put down in the library and they said Amren was out loose on the town looking, and they said that the residents were putting the blood of lamb.
That's very biblical
the
too.
Doors. Yeah. Just for Amren. And that's the kind of blood that she prefers, right?
The lamb blood. Yeah. So again, yes, I did get that, but I got like a very specific one vibe off of that. Because again, Satan is supposed to be like that bad. And we hear the story like, Amen will get you, which is kind of what we tell our kids about, like Satan will get you. Like
the devil.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so yes, I got a very specific one, and that was not a call out to the show. It just happened to be the same name, okay?
Loosely based.
But, yes. But then we also see Lucian, because they're arguing over, like, if this queen can help us, why don't we try and go after her? And, like, they're all saying, well, we can't, like, this person can't go because they're needed here. This person can't go because they're needed here. And so Lucian's like, well, I'm not needed. Like, I can go.
I'm dispensable.
I can go. He's like, I would like to feel useful. And so he goes. And there's a moment where everybody's like, should we let him go? Because like, and even Nesta is like feeling bad. She's like, what's going to happen if something happens to him? What's going to happen to Elaine? So they care about him, but not for him, but like what happens to somebody else because of him. And so I see that as like an olive branch. They're beginning to care, but not for the right reasons, but they're still beginning to care.
Yes. I feel so bad for him because you know that he knows, he's aware enough to know that it's ridiculous how he's feeling, and he's trying to fight it and not be a total just, falling over himself to get to Elaine. And he wants to give her that space, but you see him like get so jealous at every Azriel and Elaine interaction, which I could totally see them together, right? Like, it makes sense.
Even Feyre's like, well, should I push this? Like, this is a good match.
Rhysand's like, please don't play matchmaker.
Yes. I'm like, poor little Az is like wanting more. I want him to have somebody. And I'm sure he will, because Sarah J Maas does not like short us on love affairs.
Thank God.
We'll see. Yes, we'll see. And then Sandra has us ending on such a bad part in this book, guys. If you are like me, you like ended where we were supposed to end reading, and you're like, what the hell, Sandra? Because we end with the Summer Court and Tarquin getting attacked by Hybern. And so our band of heroes go to help him. And let me just say, Mor and Feyre are bad bitches.
Right?
Because they go in there and they're like winnowing, and like the Summer Court's men are in his like little castle thing trying to defend the Fays that are like the high Fays that are like locked upstairs, right? And so they are outnumbered and they are losing, and little Feyre and Mor come in and they're just like little badasses and just like and then all of them die. And it's been like 2 minutes and all of the guys are just staring at him like, holy shit.
The Morgan in action, right?
Well, and Feyre was holding her own
she was
too.
doing
Like,
her
'cause
magic.
she was like doing her like shadow, like with them and like killing them too. And so, yeah. I love that scene, guys.
Yes. We learn that there's something in the Summer Court that's suppressing power. And yeah, I feel so bad ending on chapter 36 because Rhysand literally flies to where this weird thing is located, and comes face to face with the King of Hybern on the ship deck alone.
And that's where we fucking end, is the King of Hybern. And then that's the end of the chapter.
You're welcome.
Seriously. I did send Sandra a like, what the heck?
I'm sorry.
Text.
Well, we can start reading right after this. And we didn't talk about, because this is going to be one of the things I look forward to probably next time, is so they've been beseeching the other courts to come meet with them, the High Lords, so that they could meet and talk about a strategy to take down Hybern. And so they've heard back from Day, Dawn, and Winter,
which are all their kind of allies anyway.
Yes, from the war before, but nothing from Spring Court, nothing from Autumn, nothing from
Summer Court.
Yes, and now we see, well, Summer's been a bit preoccupied, but I think they did end up getting last minute word from Tarquin, like they would consider it or something. They were thinking about it, but then this news broke. So shit's hitting the fan in true Sarah J Maas fashion.
They better side with them now, because these little bitches came and saved your ass, because that, like, you would be dead. You would be dead at this point if they had not come in and used their like considerable skills that they, what is the line from Taken?
But what I do have are a very particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
Skills that they've honed over years of.
Yeah, Liam Neeson for you. Maybe they'll rescind the blood rubies.
They better. Like, if they don't, like, they're dead to me. They can go die under the King of Hybern.
When Amren rushed in with the news that Summer Court was under attack, and they were like, wait, how the fuck do you know? And she was like, Varen told me. And they're like, Varen. She's like, I have a friend. He's something.
She's like, that's what friends do. I did see, I think, I don't know if you sent this to me, but like Sandra's been sending me these like little like TikToks, which I was supposed to stay off TikTok. Okay, guys, because TikTok has a lot of spoilers. And so I was supposed to stay off of it. And Sandra's over here sending me them. And then the very next video is something spoilery, right? And so like I am trying very hard not to let it go to a next video from the things Sandra is sending me, because what Sandra sends me is supposedly not spoilery. Although you sent me one showing me Fae ears on all of the sisters before I knew that they were all Fae. And I was like, okay, so now I know that they're all Fae. Something happens. So anyway, that's my rant. So it was of Amryn or like somebody holding a little puppy, and it was like, I will kill everybody if something happens to this puppy. And it was like Amryn is the person holding the puppy, and the puppy is Baron. And she's like, it's my friend. I will kill you all. I don't know. Did you send me that one?
I mean, I don't know. I've seen that one
Okay.
though, so I'm like, did I send you that one? We didn't talk about Feyre making a bargain with Briaxus, the monster at the bottom, like what he asked
Oh,
for.
yeah.
Remember? Because she
Mhm.
was about to die or get taken by these ravens, and Nesta was
Mhm.
freaking out trying to help her with Rhysand, and she made a bargain with this thing that Cassian is scared shitless about. And what did
Yes.
it ask for?
So it's lonely and it just wanted somebody to talk to. And so it asks her to send somebody for it to talk to, which is so sad. Like, I would go talk to the monster. Just, you can't look at him. But I would be like, again, this is me. Like, I think I'm probably going to die by petting something that is not friendly. And like, I'm going to be like, but it's cute and it looks sad. And then I'm going to die because it's not sad. It's hungry and I'm its meal. But either way, it was probably sad because it was hungry. So I was right. And I made it happy.
It was very opposite of Bone Carver in that it wanted to basically hear stories about life and things about the living and life, whereas Bone Carver was just like, ooh, tell me more about death. I don't want to go anywhere. I just want to look out through a mirror. And this thing's like, well, I just have to sit here at the bottom of the library. I'm like, I want to know what it looks like so bad. But anyway.
Yes. I don't think we missed anything else, but if you caught on to something that we missed, please leave it in the comments because I am down for hearing more Sarah J Maas like mastermind stuff.
What do we think happened to Alice? She went back to Summer Court.
I hope she's still alive. That's all I got. I hope she's still alive. I hope her little boys are too. I hope Mrs. Potts is still okay.
Mrs.
And
Potts.
Chip.
We'll put her on the screen. Mrs. Potts
And Chip. You can't forget about little Chip.
So, thanks for tuning in to this episode. We hope you had fun talking about everything that happened in the first half of A Court of Wings and Ruin by Sarah J Maas. Tune in next week for the second half. And I'm sure Tara is going to sit down and start reading to see what happens with Rhysand, our boy.
Well, I'm pretty sure he lives, so that's not really that much of a spoiler because like there's still a couple books going and they can't kill off Rhys. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure I would have found out about Rhys dying in the TikToks.
Yes, that would have been spoiled by now. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so fairly certain he would not be dead. But yes.
But hope you enjoyed this episode and we will see you next week. So, bye.
Bye.